Welcome back, everyone. We're doing another episode of Indie Reads Aloud. I am your host, Diana Catherine Penn, and today on the program, Sally Handley is joining us. She is a new to me author, so I'm going to discover her work right along with you folks. She is a cozy mystery writer, and today she's going to be reading from her book Second Bloom, which is book one in the Holly and Ivy Cozy Mystery Series. Welcome, Sally. I'm so glad you could come today.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Tell me just a little bit about why you decided to be an author. I know that we talked in the green room a little bit about how you started as an educator and at some point transitioned into being a marketer. What was the thing that said, okay, now I'm going to write books?
Well, I tried to write a little bit when I was younger. I used to write some poetry and then I wrote some short stories that weren't very good at all. I ran across them when I was moving and I unpacked them. They weren't good. But nevertheless, I always liked writing. But, when you're working for a living, it's very hard to find time. And especially if you are an English teacher, because you spend all your time correcting. And then I went into marketing and I commuted from New Jersey into New York, so I spent a lot of time reading on the train, but not writing. And it wasn't until I got near retirement that I said, I'm going to write. I got the idea to write this murder mystery, and I just went with it.
Fantastic. How many books are in the series?
I have right now 7 books in the series.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, and I have several ideas for future books in the series as well.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about Second Bloom. Give us an idea of the background for this world that you've created and a little bit about the plot that we're going to hear about today.
Okay. So my sleuths are 2 sisters who look alike, which creates lots of opportunities for confusion. And they're often mistaken for twins, which irritates Holly, the older of the two, or the younger of the two, Ivy, is irritated because she's the younger.
Uh-huh.
Um, and one sister had a career in business, and the other one is a retired nurse who recently lost her husband. Um, at the start of the series, both these characters are kind of feeling a little vulnerable about the aging process. But in this, getting involved in a murder investigation kind of gives them a renewed sense of purpose. And that's where the title Second Bloom came from. You know,
So I understand then that this is a story about the second half of life, or as friends of mine who play golf say, the back nine, right?
yes, exactly,
Okay,
exactly. My characters are in their 50s
great.
and yeah, they're at a transitional point in their lives. So in the first chapter of this book, uh Ivy comes to visit Holly in New Jersey. Ivy lives in South Carolina. She comes to visit, they take a walk, stop to visit a neighbor and find the neighbor dead on the kitchen floor.
Uh-oh. Cue the
Okay.
scary music.
Yes. So, um, the part that I'm going to read you comes from what happens after, they call 911 and get the police to come or get the EMTs to come.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm going to read you about is what happens after they get back home.
Fantastic. So second bloom is that idea of they're regenerating
Yes.
their lives into a new approach, correct?
Exactly. Yeah,
Awesome.
they have like a bit of a renaissance at this
Oh, I
point in their
like
life.
the way I'm going to use
Yeah.
that. I'm not getting older. I'm going through a renaissance.
Yes,
I like that.
absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely. A rebirth. A
Yes.
rebirth is what.
So the most important question we have whenever we talk to authors of cozy mysteries is there a cat or a dog involved in your
There
stories?
is a dog. There is a dog, a border collie named Lucky.
Fantastic. We love those furry friends in our stories.
Absolutely. You have to have one, and you have to have a little bit of romance.
Yeah, that's kind of important too. I
Yeah,
mean, what is life without it, right?
that's right.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so today Sally Handley is going to read a little bit from Second Bloom, which is book one in the Holly and Ivory Cozy Mystery Series. Sally, when you are ready, please take the microphone and read aloud.
Here we go. Back in her kitchen, Holly detached the leash from Lucky's collar and hung it on the hook near the back door. What do you want to do? She asked, walking over to the sink, looking out the back window. Ivy smiled, sitting at the kitchen table. We don't have to do anything. You want to talk? Holly turned, bit her lip, and stood just looking at Ivy for a moment. I know, she said, snapping her fingers. She crossed the kitchen, entered the dining room, and went over to the liquor cabinet. Bending down, she opened the cherrywood doors and pulled out 2 Waterford Crystal old-fashioned rocks glasses and a bottle of Jameson whiskey. Returning to the kitchen, she placed the glasses and bottle in front of Ivy. We will have a mini wake for Mrs. Hagel. I feel like I need to do something to honor her. Ivy nodded as Holly got a water glass out of the cupboard and filled it with ice. Ivy rose and located a small water pitcher from another cupboard, filling it with tap water. Both returned to the table and remained standing across from each other. The ice clinked as Ivy dropped the cubes into each glass. Holly opened the Jameson and poured. Ivy added the water. They each lifted their glasses. Ivy began the toast. Edna Hagel was a wonderful person. She was a good neighbor and a fantastic gardener. She will be missed. She raised her glass just a bit higher. To Edna. To Edna, Ivy echoed, also raising her glass. Each took a swallow, lowered her glass, and sat down. After a few more sips, Holly smiled and said, I do feel better now. Ivy laughed. That's just the whiskey. Holly reached for the bottle. If that's the case, then let's have just a bit more. As she started to pour, Lucky stood up and began to bark, heading to the front door. Somebody must be walking up the street with a dog, Holly said. When the barking got louder, Ivy got up, walked into the dining room, and looked through the front windows. Holly, there's a really good-looking man dressed in a suit and tie standing at the front gate. Do you have something to tell me? Right, Holly replied, rolling her eyes. He's probably somebody with the wrong address, she said, as she came up alongside Ivy and peered through the blinds. Yeah, he's nobody I know. Definitely at the wrong house. Outside, the muscular stranger pulled a cell phone out of his pocket and put it to his ear, placing his free hand on the gate. Ivy looked at Holly. Go comb your hair and put on some lipstick. Seriously? Seriously. Get out of here. That man is not here to see me. If he's not lost, he's probably an insurance salesman or a Jehovah's Witness. Holly turned, walking through the arched doorway into the hall. Quiet, Lucky. It's okay. Ivy turned back to the window, parting the blind slats to get a better look. I never saw a Jehovah's Witness with dark, wavy hair like his, and if he's an insurance salesman, I'd consider upping my coverage. Get out of the window, Holly said, kneeling to calm Lucky. Uh-oh, Ivy said. What? A police car just pulled up. Holly stood up and looked through the glass panes of the front door. A patrol car, lights flashing, parked in front of the house. A uniformed female officer got out, walked over, and said something to the man at the front gate. He must be a policeman, Ivy said. He just opened the gate and they're coming up the walk. Holly started to feel an adrenaline rush through her body, the one she sometimes felt right before stepping in front of a microphone at a public speaking engagement. She shook herself. What did she have to be nervous about? Lucky resumed barking. Holly reached down and grabbed her collar as the man in the suit reached the front stoop. She opened the door. It's okay. Oh, are you okay with dogs? She's friendly, Holly said. The man bent forward and offered Lucky a downturned hand. Lucky sniffed and walked past him to the uniformed officer who did the same. I'm Detective Manelli with the Pineland Park Police. The suited stranger held up his identification. Just like in the movies, Holly thought. She looked at the ID, pretending she could actually read it without her glasses. This is Officer Rivera. Are you Holly Donnelly? Yes. We'd like to talk to you, Miss Donnelly. Holly stood looking from the detective to the policewoman to Lucky. Can we come in? He asked. Of course, I'm sorry. Come in. Holly opened the door wide, knocking into Ivy, who had been standing right behind it. Sorry. She sighed and walked past Ivy through the arched doorway opposite the dining room into the living room. Ivy remained by the door. Hello, I'm Ivy Donnelly, Holly's sister. I just arrived today from South Carolina. Detective Manelli nodded and followed Holly into the living room. Are you twins? Officer Rivera asked as she entered the hallway. No, just sisters. Ivy giggled and shut the door once Lucky was inside. Have a seat, Holly said, pointing to the two wing chairs on either side of the fireplace. She sat on the couch facing the fireplace, and Ivy sat beside her. We just came from the Hagel residence, Manelli began. You placed the 911 call, Miss Donnelly, is that right? Oh, that's why you're here, Holly said, feeling her tensed shoulder muscles relax. Yes, I placed the call. Why were you there? My sister and I were walking the dog, and I told her I wanted to stop by and thank Mrs. Hagel for hiring a landscaper I recommended. How did you know Mrs. Hagel? How well did you know Mrs. Hagel? Pretty well. We've been neighbors and for more than 20 years. We belong to the same garden club together. Why'd you go to the back door? We tried the front first. I know Edna was hard of hearing, so when she didn't answer the front doorbell, I thought we should try the back. When she didn't answer there, you just let yourselves in? No. Holly didn't go in, Ivy volunteered. I did. Why? When Holly looked through the window and spotted Mrs. Hagel on the floor, I told her to call 911. When she was on the phone, I tried the door and it was open. Ivy shrugged. So you just walked in and decided to examine the body? Yes, I wanted to help if I could. I'm a registered nurse. What exactly did you do? I went in, walked over to Mrs. Hagel, and felt for a pulse. Her body was cold, no pulse. Then what did you do? I stood up and went over to the kitchen counter to look out the window and see where Holly was. I didn't want her to come in and see her friend's body. Did you touch anything? No. Wait a minute. Yes. I knocked a pill bottle on the floor, so I picked it up and... Wait a minute, Holly interrupted. What's going on here? Detective Manelli didn't answer, but merely stared at Holly. After a lifetime of working for male bosses, Holly recognized the look, condescending and meant to intimidate, the look that always turned her spine to steel. She lifted her chin, returning the stare, determined not to blink. Manelli turned back to Ivy. What did you do next? Holly leaned forward, about to stand up, but Ivy put a hand on Holly's arm. It's okay. Holly sat back as Ivy continued. I stood up and went back to the door. Holly was on the stoop. I stopped her and said we were too late. Then what? We searched the house for valuables, stuffed our pockets, and went out front to wait for the EMTs. Holly's words dripped with sarcasm as she glared at Manelli. Holly, Ivy sighed. You'll have to excuse my sister, Detective. She's quite upset about Mrs. Hagel's passing. Did you try to move the body? Manelli asked. What? I don't believe this, Holly said, looking at the policewoman sitting quietly across from her. Ivy shook her head. No, there was no reason once I knew that she was gone. So you didn't see the knife in her chest? Ivy's eyes widened and she stared at Manelli, speechless for the first time. Holly snapped her head back in Manelli's direction. What did you say? Mrs. Hagel had a knife in her chest. Oh, no. Holly covered her mouth with her hand. Ivy reached over and squeezed her other hand. Holly began to shake. I can't. Who would do such a thing? That's what we're trying to find out, Manelli said. Ivy looked from Holly to Manelli. Mrs. Hagel was on the floor, face down. I only felt for a pulse, Detective. As soon as I realized Mrs. Hagel was dead, I stood right up and went to the window to look for Holly. I understand why you need to question us, But surely you don't think we had anything to do with murder? My sister was Mrs. Hagel's friend, and I didn't even know her. What motive could we possibly have? Manelli looked down at the notepad in his hand and continued. Did you see anyone else around the house before you went in? Anything seem unusual to you? Holly shook her head. Ivy said, I can't think of anything. The landscaper you recommended, what's his name? Juan Alvarez, Holly replied. Do you have his address and phone number? Manelli asked. Yes, but Juan wouldn't. What's the address? Holly just blinked, not moving or answering. We need the contact information, Manelli said, looking at Ivy. Ivy turned to Holly. Where do you have Juan's address and phone number? Can I get it for you? It's on the side of the refrigerator, Holly answered, barely whispering. She sat still, looking down at her hands. Ivy went to the kitchen, returned with a slip of paper, and handed it to Manelli. He thanked her, stood up, and handed it to Officer Rivera, who copied down the information. Juan Alvarez is incapable of murder, Holly said, still focused on her hands in her lap. Manelli glanced at Holly, then looked at Ivy. Because you had access to the crime scene, you'll need to both come downtown to police headquarters tomorrow for fingerprinting. Holly bit her lip and brushed away a tear starting down her cheek. Ivy put her hand on Holly's shoulder and said, Of course. Here's my card, and Officer Rivera will give you hers. Call her tomorrow morning. If you think of anything that might help us, call me. Ivy took the card from the detective. Officer Rivera rose, returned the slip of paper with Juan's contact information, and added her business card. Holly remained seated on the couch, rubbing her forehead with her hands, her eyes closed. Ivy escorted the pair to the front door. After closing and locking the door, she returned to the living room. Holly looked up. I think I need another Jameson.
Thank you very much. And so the plot thickens.
Right.
What fun. So writing a series is always complex, always takes a lot of interweaving and planning. What did you find was the most difficult part about this first book in the series? Did you know where it was going to go? Or did you just kind of write it as it came to you?
Well, I am definitely a pantser, but the one thing that I do know at the beginning is who the murderer is
Okay,
and what their motive was.
great.
So that's a help. You know, if you know where you're going, it's easier to get there. Okay.
Absolutely.
But the most well, the funny thing is, I wrote the story very quickly, and when I finished, it was like 80 pages long, and I realized that like I had no red herrings, I didn't have enough other suspects, I didn't do anything right, and I had to, that this is the first time I tried to do this.
Well, and this is why first drafts are called first drafts, right?
Exactly.
Because it's just the beginning.
Exactly. And I always want to like argue with the people who look down on genre writing. Try and write a mystery if you think it's easy. Because if you're telling just a story, right? You can go any way you want, but in a mystery, you have to hit certain marks. You have to have suspects. All of your suspects had to have a motive, and they all had to have opportunity, or the mystery doesn't hold.
Exactly. And you need to have some false starts and stops, and you need to have a couple of trap doors.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. And you need to make it because, well, first of all, we read mysteries because we like to solve a puzzle. We like
sure.
to see if we can outthink or outwit the author. We can figure it out
Right.
before we get to the end of the book. But that said, a cozy mystery is definitely an escape. In fact, I have this fabulous quote from an author named Karen Sugar. She wrote an article called Why Cozies. And what she says is many of us want to be transported for a time to a time, place, and setting where we can escape for a while and read a great story with lots of twists, turns, and sometimes surprise endings. In short, something fun. And what's wrong with that? Whiling away the hours being transported to a place where you know the horrors of our world won't encroach. And
I
I
like it.
and I thought, boy, she hit the nail right on the head with that description.
Absolutely.
Because that,
So, given that, and you found yourself doing a rewrite, adding things,
yes,
rearranging things, what was your favorite part about writing this book?
actually, my favorite part was writing the romance part with Nick Manelli and Holly Donnelly. So that was just pure fun. Like it was fantasizing, and everybody says to me, "Oh, is there a Nick Manelli in your life?" I said, "Are you kidding? No, he's a dream man. He's perfect." No.
Right.
Molly doesn't
Yeah.
know that. It takes her the whole book to figure that out, which is what we like. But, unlike other many cozy mystery authors who have characters, female leads who have like three men involved in their life, no, Holly only had Nick Manelli, and
And in this first chapter, she didn't even know that was going to happen.
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yeah, I think writing the romance part was the fun part of the whole thing. The challenge was, the putting the twists and turns and having it
Hmm.
go in a little different directions. But yeah, I loved creating characters because, you have to have quirky characters too.
Sure.
And I had a couple of quirky characters in here who I was happy to bring back in later books in the series. So
Yeah,
that,
that's always fun when you discover a character that you can then expand on who they are and what they do. That's
yes,
always fun.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
I like to have
Fantastic. I'm so excited to have met you, and I'm so glad you came on the program. You have more books. Will you come back and read for me again?
I would love to.
That would be
Absolutely.
delightful. I have added Second Bloom to my TBR list while you were reading.
Thank you.
It just sounds like a great deal of fun. I'm really grateful that we have met, and we'll look forward to having you back on the program to read again.
With pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.